Next up here, we're going to go ahead and take that American standard Tele neck and try and get some of this finish off. As I've worked on my last couple of guitars, I know this poly finish is nearly indestructible. Really, you have to sand all of it out, which penetrates into the wood by about a 1/16. And I really don't want to take off that much wood to get this to look aged. It's kind of a waste of a neck. So I've got some 320 grit sandpaper here, and I'm just lightly scuffing up the finish, trying to see what I could get out of this. Sometimes you never know. These finishes can be a little bit more forgiving, so we'll figure go ahead and try it. So we'll get this 320 grit and go back and forth along the neck profile. And I can tell as I'm working on it, it's not going to come off the way I want to. So I'm hoping that maybe with some shoe polish or something along those lines, I can get it to fade or tint up a little bit. Really don't like the sort of white maple-ish color on this neck. Definitely needs a more amber look. And based on what I did to the body, having it that pale white neck, it won't look as good. So after a little bit of back and forth here, it's not doing it. I'll fast forward through this a little bit for you guys here. So on the body last time, I used some shoe polish. A couple guys were concerned that was going to fall off or sort of wear out, and potentially it could, but I'm okay with that. Took a little bit more of that neck down with the 320, and I've got this oil-based paint, a really dark brown. I'm going to rub this in and see what it does at this point. And we'll wipe some of this off. Didn't really dark up like I wanted to. A little bit here and there, but you could see some of the scratch marks from 320. So I knew I had to take a higher grit sandpaper to this to get it to look and feel how I wanted it to. So as I was rubbing in the oil paint, you can see the scratches there, and that just doesn't look all that good. So after playing around a little bit, we're just going to take off all the hardware and get to doing a little bit more sanding here. We'll pop off the string tree here, put all this hardware to the side, come back with a higher grit here. This is 600 grit now, and I'll pull out any of those fine scratches. And as I was doing this, I could see I started to wear off the finish a little bit. And when I've seen guys age these necks before, they just continue to sand, and then they leave sort of this bare wood look, and then they dye it. And I don't like that look either. I think that looks fake. Of course, I'm looking for an authentic aged guitar. So this is the 600 grit, like I said. I'm going to rub this along the top, on the back, and we're going to play with a little bit of fire just to see what it would do. I wasn't going to take this to the fretboard. I didn't want to heat and shrink it. What was interesting, the heat darkened up the finish just a little bit, which was actually kind of nice. So the headstock just darkened just slightly. And so now I'll come back with, I think this is 800 grit. This is open grain sandpaper, 800 grit. And we'll just sand this a little bit more as well. Get all those scratch marks out. Get this prepped for a couple other runs at darkening it up. So we'll roll up the sandpaper and then go between each fret here. Try and wear it out slightly. That wasn't really working all that well. So I've got a razor blade, and you've seen me do this before in other videos where I'm taking that razor blade and trying to just scrape a little bit of that finish off. And you can see as I'm scraping this off, that residue is all white, so I'm not getting at any wood. I just want to take a little bit of off, and then when I come back over the sandpaper, I'm hoping just to wear it down slightly. So then we'll come back with steel wool, try and get any scratches out, and again, just wear it down slightly. So when you've got a nitro neck, guys will take some acetone, like I am here, and a Q-tip, and they'll rub and sort of wear off that finish where you're playing a lot. And what I thought the acetone would do here is sort of break down the finish a little bit more. And so I'm rubbing the acetone right where the strings are and trying to pull off a little bit of finish. That's not really working at all. I thought if it would sit for a second, it would sort of help brittle up the finish slightly, which it doesn't. This works on a nitro neck, but it's not working on this poly neck. So we're rubbing it in a couple of spots. I figured I'd try it and see if it would do anything. And this would only really work on a maple neck where you want to sort of dirty up the maple. What you do for a nitro neck is you would rub this in the spots, then come back with shoe polish or some sort of darker material and rub it in, and you get that same sort of fade lines. Not really a big fan of them, but I thought I wanted to try a little bit and see if the acetone would help break this down at all. In the Paul Reed Smith video that I have, I tried to use stripper to get the finish off the fluoroplast, and that didn't work at all, so I figured I'd just try something else here. Not making much progress at all. So after we tried and tried and tried, it's not working. I'll come back with some steel wool and just pull any of the material out. And I was hoping that magic combination would do something to this finish, and it's not. So we'll clean it off slightly, wait a little bit, and come back with the dark brown, blackish acrylic paint, oil-based paint. Got that at Hobby Lobby. I was hoping this would darken it up a little bit more. And I really didn't like the way the paint was sitting on the neck. It kind of dried hard and odd, if that makes sense. It didn't look as natural as the shoe polish, and it kind of just got like sticky right away. So this wasn't a great idea at all. And an even brighter idea then was to try and buff it out, which didn't do anything. I was hoping buffing it out would sort of push it in and take it out, and it just wasn't doing it. So I've got all these old buffs that I could play around with, and it wasn't doing anything for me. So we'll come back and then begin to take this all off. So that's some steel wool, and we'll pull off whatever I had on there. And that paint just dried kind of oddly hard. So I thought with using a higher grit sandpaper, I could get it to look right, and it didn't look good at all. So we'll come back with the steel wool and clean off all of this as well. So get in all the nooks and crannies of the fretboard and just pull the stuff off. And again, we'll come back with a razor blade and scrape this off. And you can see as soon as I start scraping again, it's perfectly white. So then I had a pretty genius idea to sort of restain it with Angelus dyes and then put a coat of True Oil over it. And I think that might be the way to do it. So I was playing around with the True Oil, and I'm using Brandy True Oil here. And we're going to rub this on once we got the neck all clean. We're going to put on the neck, headstock, and fretboard. We'll work this in a couple different ways. I didn't know how this would sit, to be quite honest. I thought it might end up looking streaky, but since I sort of took off that initial gloss coat on the poly, this ended up looking pretty good. So I tried to get on about 2 coats, and it definitely darkens up the neck. And at this point, it doesn't look all that fake. It just looks tinted. And there are a couple wear spots from where I was sanding. So I'm thinking it's looking pretty good. So once we get the brandy on the fretboard and on the back, we're going to hit it with some True Oil. And I put 4 additional coats of True Oil on this. And I thought it looked pretty good. It doesn't look like it's been terribly aged. It is a little bit worn out in a couple spots. With the 4 coats of True Oil, it'll have more of a natural feel, which is what I like. It's still got that really thick coat of poly, but this darkened it up, makes it look a little bit more natural, and I think it matches the body a lot better. So I didn't film me putting on the 3 other coats. Pretty happy. We'll see what this looks like after a while. This guitar is for sale, guys. Make me an offer. You can take one of my guitars home. Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next video.